So say you're doing 5x5 and you finished the centers and now you're doing the edges. So you're doing the edges, but then you realize that you're going to have to do a bunch of Z2 rotations, which is not the most ergonomic thing you can do. And well, if you want to avoid Z2 rotations, then you gotta have at least one side completed with all the solved edges. And that way you only need to do Y rotations when necessary, and the Z2 rotations are basically irrelevant since you already have a side that's full of solved edges, so you don't need to worry about the pieces down here. And it would be even more beneficial if these solved edges taking up a whole face were cross edges, because that will help in 3x3 stage, since after you finish solving the redux method, you're probably going to have to scan the pieces for the cross, since these pieces could literally be anywhere. Because of this, there are two methods that address this problem, Yao5 and Hoya. The solving process of Yao5 is similar to that of the Yao method on 4x4, where you solve two opposite centers, one of them being your cross center, and then solving 3 of the 4 cross pieces before solving all the centers. And although you are solving a whole side worth of crosses faster, you are sacrificing some time solving the centers because there is less movement, less freedom on how you can solve the centers, because there is a restriction where you can only turn this layer and because there is no cross piece occupying this slot. In the Hoya method, even though there is more freedom of movement when solving the centers after solving the cross, tracking these cross pieces themselves is going to be slightly harder. The first step in solving the 5x5 cube using the Hoya method is to solve two opposite centers. However, unlike the Yao method, neither of these colors can be your cross center. So in my case, because I solve the my cross color is white, I can only make orange and red centers or blue and green centers. But on the second step, you have to solve your cross color center. So because my cross color is white, the next center I'm gonna make has to be white. So in this case, like so. Now the third step is to rotate so the white center is now on the back and solve whatever center is up here. And you'll notice that the order of solving your centers is more restricted, but it does help because your white center would already be in the bottom, and this step is where you solve the cross. To recap what I just said, the first step of solving the 5x5 using the Hoya method is to solve two opposite centers. However, neither of them can be a cross center. So because my cross color is white, I can only solve the green and blue centers or the orange and red centers on the first step of the Hoya method. So I'm going to solve green first and then blue. Now the next step is to solve your cross color center. So my next center is going to be white. So I'm going to be solving that real quick, like so. Now the next step is to rotate so your white center is now on the back and solve whatever center is on top. So in my case, it's the orange center. Now, the reason why we're restricting the solving order of the centers is because if we do the same rotation, now putting the orange center in the back, the white center is now on the bottom, which means that you don't need to do any additional rotations to get the white center on the bottom. And we need the white center to be on the bottom in order to solve the cross edges, which is the next step in Hoya. Now, in my opinion, this is probably the hardest part about solving the cube using the Hoya method, because the cross pieces could literally be anywhere. But the method that I sort of use is to solve these like middle edges first, like so. So now you have these cross thingies, and then you solve the outer cross edges, like these ones over here. And one last note, you do have to memorize the color scheme when building these middle crosses. Now this step is probably the most fun step, and it's basically to solve all of these outer edges. In this case, I have these two free centers, so because of this, I can basically insert these red pieces, so I can solve this edge like so. And one thing you're going to notice immediately is that If you know F2L, then this step is going to be incredibly easy. You can't just rotate and then insert edge pieces, or insert edge pieces from the back, or else you're going to destroy any progress you have made with these centers over here. So essentially you just have to do D's, D primes, and D2s in order to bring these like middle cross centers to these two unsolved centers, and then you can solve these outerish bits over here, like so. And again, this is pretty hard to track. These edges are pretty hard to track, so it's pretty hard to know when your cross is done. So if you feel like your cross is done, then you can peek down, and if you do have like one thing missing, then you can check the cube, see if you have anything missing, and then insert that into the cross. Now the next step is to do FL or F prime R prime. And this way you can solve the last two centers pretty easily, and you don't have to worry about any movement restrictions. Just remember to undo the setup moves. And there you go. You have all your centers solved, and you have the cross solved. And having a cross solved means that you have a whole side full of edges, so you don't have to worry about doing any Z2 rotations. Because if you do a Z2, you have all the edges here, and there are no unsolved edges down here because you just have your cross here. And it's also beneficial in 3x3 stage because then you only need to look at an F2L pair instead of 4 cross pieces, which is easier to manage. So essentially the second to last step is to just solve the last 8 pieces, and you're essentially done. Now up next are going to be a few example solves on the Hoya method, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below and I will answer them as fast as possible. So yeah. So in this scramble, what I can see is I can immediately do the orange center quickly by doing something like this. So the orange center is solved, so I'm gonna go and do the red center. There's this thing over here. I'm going to solve the last thing like that. So that's the first step, solve two opposite centers where neither of them are your cross center. And the next step is to solve the cross center, obviously. And here's a trick that I use. Whenever I see at least 2 middle centers, I would align them so they're both opposite of each other, and then just spam end moves until I form a bar. And that way I can do some stuff like this, which could help me solve this white center. So essentially, if I just have these like two things over here, I could just spam the M move, like the middlemost layer, until this bar is constructed. And then solving this cross center would be easier. Now next step, I'm going to rotate so the white center is on the back and solve whatever center is on top. In this case, it's a blue center. So I'm going to solve it like so, and then like that. And now the blue center is solved. So now the next step is to solve the middlemost edges, or at least solve the cross. So those were the red and blue. I know that opposite of blue is green. And I see the orange edge right here. So I'm going to do a D2L to solve these middle crosses. Now I see blue is in front of me. I see this blue piece. So I'm going to insert it in like so. And this orange piece too. So I'm going to do a D and insert that as well. I see this green bit. So I'm going to insert that. This blue bit gets kicked out. So I'm going to do a D2 to get blue in front of me. And insert that piece. Now the blue edge is solved. I see this red up here, so I'm going to essentially do that. I see that green bit over here, so I'm going to do this as well. And I don't really see anything that pops up to me, so I'm going to look down, and clearly I have this bit here. So I'm going to go take it out and put it where it belongs. Now I just have this one bit left, so I'm going to try to find it. It's right here, so I'm going to insert it in like so. Now, personally, I do FL, but you can do F prime, R prime. So I do FL and solve the yellow center. That is like that. And then reverse setup moves, and essentially I'm just going to solve the last 8 edges. So, like so, those were 2, that's 3, 4 edges. Alright, so what I usually do is I do L prime, U, L2, U, L prime to get 2 edges in here, and then rotate. But really, you can do anything you want. You can solve 4 edges and then make 2 F2L pairs or whatever. And now we're at 3x3 stage. 1 F2L pair, 2 F2L pairs, 3 F2L pairs, 4 F2L pairs, OLL, and PLL. Now for the next walkthrough solve, even though white kind of looks appetizing, I can't solve white on the first step of Hoya method because white is my cross color. And consequently, I can't solve yellow as well. But I do see this orange bar over here, so I'm going to take advantage of that. So I'm going to solve the orange center like so. I'm going to have to preserve this bar over here, so let me see, solve this other thing over here, and then there's the orange center. Rotate, and I'm going to solve this red center over here because red is on the opposite side of orange. So I'm going to go like so. Next step, I'm going to solve the white center, so or my cross color center. So I see these 2 middle centers across from each other, so I'm just going to spam M moves until I get this bar. Now I see these 2 and this corner, so I'm going to pair them up like so. And then I'm going to solve the other bar like so. Now I'm going to rotate, solve whatever center is on top. In this case, it's blue again. So I'm going to solve that center as well. I'm going to solve the middle edges because now that I've rotated again, white is on the bottom. So I don't have to do any extra rotations to sort of reorient myself. I see red. I also solve blue, but because this is supposed, if blue is here, orange is supposed to be here, not red. So I'm going to do an RD2 R prime to correct the color scheme. Orange is now here. I don't see the green edge immediately, so I'm just going to jump back. I'm just going to go ahead and solve the edges, like the outer edges. So the thing with solving the cross and Hoya method is that you don't have to restrict yourself to solving the middle edges and then solving the 2 outer ones. I can really just get away with pulling stuff off like this. So solve this green thing, solve the other green thing. Like, you can get away with stuff like this, and when it does come time to put the middle edge in, you can just do an M2, like an MU insert. So like so. I'm gonna do FL because that's what I do. You can do F prime R and R prime again. I'm gonna solve the last 2 centers, like so. Undo my setup moves, and here we go. I got the cross solved and all the centers are solved as well. So I'm going to solve the last 4 edges like so. So now that I've finished solving the edges, I've gotten into the way of putting in 2 F2L pairs as well. I'm going to be doing some video editing magic to solve the cube like this. And that concludes the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as me making and editing this video for you guys to see. And I hope this video got you into trying out the Hoya method and maybe maining it just like me. Anyways, down in the description, there's a Discord server for you to join if you want to, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss out on some other juicy content, and I will see you next time. Bye.